Last week I talked about Haytham's weapons choices in some of the videos I made, providing rough calculations of some weapons, which weren't based on a full team damage calculation, and were still at an early stage as a whole. Since then, I've calculated more weapons with a full team setup in mind, and I now have a much clearer idea of what's good for him and what's not. In this video, I'll show the results of my calculations, and then I'll show my tier list about his weapons, as raw calculations don't account for all realistic scenarios, so a subjective take is needed to get the full picture here. First of all, let me list the assumptions I made for this calculation. He's on a normal spread-based team with Haitham as a teammate, meaning he receives the elemental mastery buff from the Dendro Resonance and from her passive. Haitham holding the full Deepwood set, while Haitham is holding the full Gilded Dream set. Haytham's ER requirements are around 135%. This is generally the setup where Haytham deals the most damage by himself, as he's getting as many spread procs as possible. Now, let me show you his weapon's damage numbers based on my calculations. Just like in my past calculation, his signature is his best weapon, but there is not much of a difference between it and other strong options such as Mist Splitter or Jade Cutter. For Mist Splitter, I calculated it based on the realistic amount of stacks you get during the rotation that's listed, meaning you get 3 stacks initially, and then 2 after 5 seconds. On this calculation, Heron is listed higher than the ones I made in the past, as the current rotation I'm using relies on normal attacks more than the ones I used before. In general, the more normal attacks your rotation has, and the shorter it is, the more Heron's 8 seconds long normal attack buff will be impactful. Harbinger of Dawn also performed really well in my calculations, but remaining over 90% HP at all times is a quite hard requirement to fulfill, and generally only possible with shielders on the team. Even then, it's not 100% guaranteed, so take what you see here with a grain of salt. Among the best 4 stars options for his damage, Shigyr, Black Sword and Iron Sting all do pretty decently, but Shigyr is limited by the fact its passive only applies to a single target. As you can see, I included a bunch of weapons in the calculation that contribute to his energy recharge in one way or another. In those cases, I assumed he needed 0 ER from his substats. That said, these options aren't very good. Xiphos can be situationally decent if you can make use of its team-wide energy recharge passive, but other than that, it's not impressive for Haytham's damage. Also, weapons that provide elemental mastery are a bit devalued here, due to how much EM he can already gain through other means. Now, let me show you my tier list. I ranked the 3 best options from my calculations all in the highest tier, despite the signature being slightly above Jade Cutter and Mist Splitter single target damage-wise. The reason is that part of the signature's passive, namely the part that increases his normal and elemental skill damage by a percentage of his elemental mastery up to 28 times, scales quite badly in multi-target, as a single AoE hit will count as multiple procs, penalizing this effect compared to other, more universal passives. Heron is ranked just below those because its passive relies on specific combos and rotation lengths, but it still can be as strong as the best options on the list, situationally. I also ranked Freedom Sworn, Black Sword, and Harbinger of Dawn all in the same tier. I was tempted to put Freedom Sworn higher because of its team-wide effect, but then I realized that on most of his teams, team-wide attack buffs won't actually be that impactful, as he'll be surrounded by teammates that scale better through other stats for the most part. As I mentioned before, Harbinger of Dawn can be inconsistent, hence I ranked it low compared to what the calculation was showing. I also penalized Shigyr due to its single target related passive, ranking it in the same tier as weapons that, for the most part, perform worse than it damage-wise, while Xiphos is favored by the fact Haytham's teammates can usually benefit from the extra energy recharge it provides. Other energy recharge scaling weapons are listed below Xiphos, as it was evident from the graph I've shown earlier that they just aren't good damage options. Generally, if you own one of the strong 5 stars options, I'd say that pulling for the signature might be a bad idea. Otherwise, if you have enough Primo Gems, it'd be a pretty good pull, especially since it's a huge stat stick that can be used on other units as well. I'm done for today. If you liked the video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time.